Hello there. I'm going to do a video that I've been thinking of doing, that I have thought about in the last few days and for a long time, on the subject of abortion and should abortion be illegal. And I'm actually a little nervous about the topic. As some of you may know, um, I, studied to be a priest in two different religious orders, the Dominicans and the Discalced Carmelites. I have a doctorate in sacred theology from a Roman Pontifical University, the Angelicum. And I also have a Juris Doctor law degree from Harvard Law School. So in law school, I studied constitutional law, which is, I think, mandatory first year. But then I took advanced constitutional law with Lawrence Tribe, one of the great experts on the Supreme Court and on the Constitution, still around. And we had some discussion on abortion there that I may get to mention, uh, as far as extreme positions are concerned. And I also, took church and state with Professor Mansfield, and so I have a background enough to justify my sharing my humble reflections with whoever is interested in this. So that the topic of abortion is an incendiary topic. I want to discuss why that is, and what it means, what it implies as to our society, etc. In the state of Florida here, we have a very conservative governor who is, I think, trying to be president, following the Trumpist line. And I think he's not a good guy. And he's manipulating the electorate in this state of Florida, which has actually, caused elections to be overturned with badly designed ballots and all kinds of other problems, and a governor's office that ran the election basically and gave the election to Bush instead of Gore, which Gore graciously accepted. But of course, a large number of Republicans believed the election was stolen from Trump, which is completely false, and no court ever granted any of his petitions or complaints. But still, people can believe almost anything. And one of the purposes of my video today is to sort of demonstrate how I, highly educated, I guess, and highly experienced in many church circles, etc. And I taught at a Catholic major regional seminary for 14 years, sacred scripture, how somebody like me approaches this very incendiary topic. And the reason I mentioned the governor of Florida is that what they have in Florida, I think, proposed or maybe legislated already, is to limit abortion to the first 15 weeks, which is over 3 months. And I suppose this is a sort of a voting compromise, so that even they say 62% of the American electorate or the American people are in favor of keeping Roe versus Wade. But you can start to sort of chisel away at the right to have an abortion, which I'm going to discuss what I think about that, by compromises, 15 weeks or some other thing. And basically what the Supreme Court seems to want to do when they issue its opinion officially is to leave it to the states. And so that you can have states that are blue states and you can get abortions there if you can afford to go, etc. And then some other states will get elected officials that ban abortion. Or in Texas, I think you can have a citizen's arrest and completely, you know, sort of, arrest people for doing abortions. But the fact that the 15-week limit is allowed presently means that the underlying argument, which is that life is sacred from conception, uh, the underlying sort of implicit argument or tendency is that eventually you're going to completely outlaw any abortion or morning after pills, etc. And this is what the so-called pro-life people want. They think that if they criminalize abortion, they are protecting the unborn, and this confers a badge of morality on them that is incredibly weird, because the same kind of people are for free guns for everybody. We have mass shootings all the time. Second Amendment, which, I mean, I can get so emotional about this. I would use toilet paper to wipe my behind with the Second Amendment or with the interpretations of the Second Amendment that they make. The right to an armed militia, whatever, in the Constitution, they make it into any lunatic. This guy should have been evaluated and was evaluated for mental health. He still bought an arsenal and body armor and killed all these people that he targeted in Buffalo. And this happens all the time. So that you're pro-life, protecting the unborn, but then you have the badge or the permit to allow guns, don't care about health care, all the Republican, points. Deregulate, the planet can go to hell, it's all fake news. Trump won the election, lies are okay, not thinking is fine. This is pro-life, which is incredible. And then, of course, it's really, under the guise of protecting the fetus that has not been born. They protect them at least, 15 weeks or some other limit in some other cases. You basically are saying, life is sacred from conception, and you can make illegal abortion. Now, the idea that life is sacred from conception is a Roman Catholic dogma, I suppose. It's a very serious, long-standing tradition. And now you have, evangelicals and others who like to latch on. I call them easy topics. To outlaw abortion absolves you from a whole bunch of other much more difficult things, immigration, and many more difficult social dilemmas. Then you can start going into a whole moral reform. You get into the gay issue, outlaw, go back to maybe sodomy laws. Why not? Why not? Sodomy laws. In England, they castrated the guy that did the Enigma, solved the Enigma puzzle, Turing. So you've legislated morals very often. They had witch hunts in the Middle Ages. They burned at the stake. The Catholic Church burned at the stake many people. Or maybe, as they say in the documents, relaxed in other words, handed over to the civil arm, the government, the actual execution of what they had determined with trials, that somebody was a heretic and would and And in Valencia in Spain in 1391, they offered the Jews three choices: death, baptism, or exile. This is all a history that you need to know, that means that we evolve in what we legislate. Aquinas, the great genius, I always say Dominican, thought it was all right to forcibly enter synagogues, interrupt services to preach Christ. Behind this is the notion that was raised in Vatican II: falsehood has no rights. There is no religious liberty. This was highly contested in Vatican II. That's why these non-thinking, rightists may not even know this, but in Vatican II, religious liberty, which some prominent American theologians promoted, was a highly controversial issue for a small minority. Falsehood has no rights. So in a sense, the Catholic view would have been, they conquered the Americas that way too. You say Christ has given the Pope the two swords, Caesaropapism, whatever. You have two swords. You have the religious sword. You can, attack heretics, etc. And you also have a civil sword. And monarchs rule by divine appointment, and the Pope has a lot, to do with that. He crowned Charlemagne, and then get later Napoleon, I guess, crowned himself. But you have this sort of slippery slope between religious doctrine and legislation. And for many, many years, and in the Muslim countries, Sharia, etc., infidels have no rights. So what you're really doing is you're imposing a view that is central, I think, to Catholicism, as to the sacrality, sacredness of the fertilized egg, which, by the way, Aquinas, following Aristotle, if I'm not mistaken, I don't prepare these talks too well, but he thought that the sperm contained a homunculus, a little man. And what the woman provided was the matrix, the ovum, the egg, in which this little man, tiny, minuscule little man, could develop into a human being. But it's in that case, masturbation was almost like a crime, I mean, and it was, or maybe even in sodomy cases. I think in some southern states they might, want to spy on you or something. That has to do with the gay thing. But what you're doing is you are saying that a religious belief or a metaphysical or philosophical belief that the fertilized egg has a right to life, in this case, a constitutional right to life. So that if you interfere, and nature may do it itself, and sometimes you have exceptions, maybe for rape, or an exception for the life of the mother. This was the old Catholic moral doctrine of double effect. If you have to save, if the mother continues with the pregnancy, fallopian or whatever it is, to pregnancy, if you have to have a choice between saving the mother or saving the fetus, you save the mother, even though indirectly and unintentionally, but for sure, you're going to destroy the fetus in the operation you do to save the life of the mother. Extract what is making her, explode or whatever with this false, bad pregnancy because of the position or place of the fetus, etc. These are things that I'm not, that knowledgeable about. But what I'm saying is, you have exceptions, you have a gray areas, and to impose or this kind of belief that is shared by Catholics and some evangelicals and some others, and legislated into law, is incredibly problematic. It's not separation of church and state. You're saying, even if 62% believe you keep Roe v. Wade, you're saying, no, really, we are defenders of life and we protect the most vulnerable, the unborn, and then everything else is a little bit sort of, very secondary. And what really gets my goat is that, to me, this is all a camouflage to keep it simple, stupid. For many people, you know, protect the fetus, especially as it begins to look more and more like a baby, which it does, and the heartbeat and all these things, incredibly emotional things. And you latch on to this topic, which fires people up. I had a seminarian who said he really didn't seem to be that interested in being a priest. His obsession was abortion and praying outside abortion clinics with the rosary. And the reason he gave for wanting to be a priest was that he would have more authority with his presence as a priest, protesting against women going into abortion clinics. So what, to me, the bottom line issue, the basic issue, is how politicians manipulate and inflame, and politicians and others like them, inflame the masses. And the masses can be inflamed with many different things. Hitler inflamed the masses largely with blaming the Jews for all their problems. And the masses were already ready to be inflamed, kind of to be kindled in a way, because of the defeat of World War I, the humiliation. When you have people that feel humiliated, left out, and angry, then manipulating politicians with dictatorial tendencies, power hungry people, they look to see where I get my fire up. Even Facebook is doing it. You engage people more with anger. So you allow more free reign to inflammatory, fake news, or whatever it takes to have people listen and watch and do clicks or whatever whatever it is that makes profits come. So let's be clear, outlawing abortion is not going to stop abortions. I've said this before in other videos. I come from Cuba. In Cuba, abortion was completely illegal. But nevertheless, Dr. So-and-so, I'm not going to mention his name, although I remember it, and I met him in Miami, in the place where my father came from, did a whole bunch of abortions. My grandfather, I want to spill some beans here, was a medical doctor, a businessman, and very, very highly placed in central Cuba. And he had a lot of brothels, or he had a lot of houses that he rented to madams. And who knows, how many abortions occurred in those situations. People will get abortions. If you have money, you're going to get it more safely and more quickly and more easily than if you're poor, and then you may resort to all kinds of things. But if you say, no, 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 we have to impose this belief that life is sacred. We're willing to compromise. We'll cut it off at 15 weeks when they start really looking like a baby or something. But we're really aiming at a cleanup of society, cleaning the swamp, stopping the carnage. The biggest, inauguration ever attended. Lies. They stole the election from me. No court, no Giuliani efforts, nothing backs that up. They say a high percentage of Republicans believe they stole the election from Trump. This means that you have a huge number of, I don't want to insult them with bad names, but who don't think. They just have wild belief. This guy that went to Buffalo to talk about something that happened 2 days ago, whatever it was, inflamed about this replacement with too many blacks. Okay, supposing that you want to do something about immigration or something, to go to a community that's not going to leave and to live stream it to entice others or inspire others to kill blacks, diminish the black population, or maybe encourage blacks to go back to Africa, or what? But it's crazy stuff. The pizza place that Hillary Clinton sold babies from, or whatever. So we are at that level of idiocy. I will mention that word. We are at that level of insanity. And they talk about the sacredness of the Second Amendment, which has to be regulated. Smoking, why can't you smoke inside? Why can't you do? Why did slavery become illegal? Why did usury or charging interest, which was just illegal in the medieval church, why did that begin to change? There is an evolution. You have some sort of a social contract of which civility and real dialogue and knowledge and electing leaders who are as honest and as capable and as knowledgeable as possible should be the goal. What somebody like this Taylor Greene, whatever her name is in Georgia, this is now the lowest common denominator, is as angry and as out. This is a Jerry Springer generations or the effect. It's a free for all. You just alarm and get people as excited. I've said it many times. I listen to the commercials, how they yell, "We buy any car, we buy any car, we buy any car, any." And I say, those commercials are directed to vegetables that need to be woken up or something, because I wouldn't run out to buy a car because somebody's yelling at me to do that. I think about it, and I guess many people do too. But my point being that we've gotten to a point where, in a sense, people inhabit very closed worlds. I like to think I don't, because of the fact that I've lived in 6 different countries: Cuba, Mexico, the Dominican Republic, United States, Spain, and Italy. And I tried to learn a lot of history. I remember, I have mentioned this before, another example of the Vatican II event. Many of these bishops, more than 2,000 bishops, most of them had been trained in very narrow schools with manuals of theology where everything was filtered to conform to this very simplified, clear doctrine. The Pope spoke about it this morning in the Wednesday audience, a religion of petty rules where everything, he's talking about the book of Job and how Job's 3 friends and then a 4th friend are the know-it-all explainers of everything, and Job ends up meeting God in some way and shutting his mouth and saying, "I'm not gonna judge God." But these guys were full of hot air and arrogance in explaining every single thing that had happened to Job, which was really unexplainable. The Pope talked about this morning very, very clearly, and all the suffering that many people have in their lives, especially in old age, and how they may hopefully find peace at the end of at the end of their life, or towards the end of their life. So that what happened in Vatican II was that you had some real scholars, the Dominicans and the Jesuits in the front of this, putting the Bible as a very important book that needed to be studied correctly, scientifically. The door to this was opened by Pius XII in 1943 with Divino Afflante Spiritu, the encyclical on the Bible. 5 years too late for the pioneer of Catholic biblical studies, Father Mary Joseph Lagrange, who had been silenced. He was silenced from Old Testament studies, then silenced in New Testament studies, and then dies under a cloud of doubt as to his orthodoxy. And then 5 years after his death in 38, if I'm not mistaken, Divino Afflante Spiritu comes out and legitimizes. And then if you jump, and I've said this before, you jump 50 years from that 1993, and by name, Lagrange is rehabilitated in the document of the church, the interpretation of the Bible in the church, 1993, presented to Saint John Paul II by Cardinal Ratzinger, future Pope Benedict XVI, and my professor, later Cardinal Vanois, the secretary of the Pontifical Biblical Commission, was the one that said we must mention Lagrange by name, so that there's evolution in that. But what happened, these Bible scholars working for years, since the time of Lagrange and since the time of Divino Afflante Spiritu in 43, and then the theologians going back to the fathers of the church, going back to church history, Henri de Lubac and so many others, and Congar with ecumenism and things like that, they started sharing all this with the bishops. And the bishops, by and large, were saying, we didn't know any of this because we were given these manuals. We were trained to, like foot soldiers, without thinking, just go down the tunnel and shoot or something. And my point being that the more you know, the more you cultivate thinking, the more you cultivate knowledge, it has a moral effect. That's why Trent, when it reformed the clergy with the conciliar seminaries, Council of Trent in the 16th century, they linked the training of priests academically with increasing their moral level. Ignorant people tend to be less moral, let's face it. Not necessarily, but less educated people believe weirder things and tend to get angry or more frustrated. But you can also be, very, very smart, and then your software, as I've said, can be faulty, or you get a virus in your great computer, and then you're not computing very, very well. So that to me, this abortion issue is largely a political manipulation thing. A devout Catholic, devout evangelical, a good person, whoever it is, can refuse abortions. Whether he was sincere or not, I saw the young Trump saying, I don't like abortion, I'm against abortion, but I don't want to legislate against it. He changed that later when it was politically expedient. So nobody's going to force anyone to have an abortion. But if you try to legislate morality, and you begin with the unborn, who knows at what stage, which in itself is already problematic. It means you are already compromising politically 15 weeks or whatever number of weeks it is. You have to arrive at some sort of, legislative wisdom. And I'm not going to get into, and I don't know that much about it, Roe v. Wade, as far as whether it was good law or not. Alito, apparently Justice Alito apparently says it was bad law and all this kind of stuff. But I do know that you can't legislate morality except in things on which there is a broad consensus. You know, you have to have a broad consensus. You have to do things rationally and with the freedom that jurisprudence should have to reason out how to best live together. And people would probably agree that when it's almost a fully formed baby or whatever line you want to draw, that you it would be repugnant or something to abort that child. Now, when I was in a little anecdote in advanced constitutional law with Lawrence Tribe, I'll be honest with you, I had my hand raised up while some uh, female law student, whose name I remember but will not mention, said that the woman has the right to terminate the pregnancy up to the moment of childbirth. And I wanted to, give my opinion against that. And Tribe would not let me, would not, you know, accept my hand raised. She could go on and talking to everybody else that he liked, I guess, but me, no. Just like when I was in Spain, I took an ecclesiology course in the major seminary of Madrid, and this guy was saying all kinds of barbarities. In my opinion, these were very conservative Spaniards. All I wanted to do was to talk in class, like people should be able to do. Would not allow me to talk. So I've seen a little bit of everything, but I know that if we know the history of laws and you know that there were sodomy laws or laws regarding blacks or women in their vote or slaves or gays or whatever it is, you arrive in our constitutional system, which is in great peril because with fake news, you can make up any facts you want. And a large portion of this country is susceptible to believing whatever you're presenting that's going to fit in with their anger or keep it simple stupidness. And Hitler, and all dictators do this. Putin, I think, is doing this now in Russia. But the blows that have been dealt to the notion of truth and civic discourse in this country, and I blame Trump as a landmark in this, is the greatest blow anti-life there is in the world. When you destroy minds and prepare them to do almost anything, and you fire them up with this notion that they are pro-life and they are protecting the unborn, the most vulnerable among us, etc. It's an illusion. It's not going to stop. You can't legislate something or propose to legislate something to win votes when it's a chimera. It's an illusion. It's not going to happen. You have to arrive at a much more rational solution to really all our moral values, and many of them will be in the private realm. Whether you do this or not with this guy or this other person, uh, when I studied the law, overriding state interests, etc., they have to be rationally based. When you interfere with somebody's freedom, even if what they're doing, drinking too much or taking too many drugs or whatever it is, in some cases, in the drug cases, heroin or something like that, you still have to legislate. England handed out these, I don't know if they called them pellets or jackets of heroin, because they figured it was less harmful to distribute, clean heroin and maybe needles instead of just letting these people out on the streets. Marianne Faithfull would have been one of them. Um, Seeking any kind of heroin, or maybe robbing to get heroin, maybe dying and or running up hospital expenses because of this, etc. My point being, in a rational, reasonable society, you have to explore and discuss and arrive at rational ways of living together. Muslims are going to have a different idea. Those countries, those Muslim countries, I'm not a big fan of, I'll be honest with you. I studied Islam very seriously and enthusiastically in my years as a Dominican in Mexico. In my website, you can Google Emilio Chavez Bible explainer. I have my long paper, 20 pages or so, on Islam in Spanish. But in the present day situation, those hardline regimes have driven out everybody who's not a good Muslim, especially infidels. Jews have left, Christians have all left. That's what totalitarianism looks like. When you impose religious ideas. That's what the pogroms and the medieval persecutions of Jews, which I have studied, were all about. Conformity. And by the way, the Inquisition, I've said this before, the Inquisition had a very specific purpose to try to unify countries. If you can get everybody to think alike, then you have national unity. Spain kept out the Lutherans, the Catholic kings, Ferdinand and Isabella, kept out the Lutheran invasions that affected other countries by having very strict control of religious thought. That's why Ignatius Loyola was brought before the Inquisition. Teresa of Jesus had her books examined, etc. They submitted. But if you had quietist prayer or some other kind of prayer that was suspect because it wasn't the normal type of Catholic prayer, you were in trouble. This is my exercise. Listening to people, as I have, who think and know and study and reason, faith and reason, Aquinas and the Catholic tradition, not emotion and hatred and hysteria. That's why these slogans, my body, hands off, etc., that's probably also another extreme there. People always fall back on these slogans because you keep it simple, stupid. KISS and the Alcoholics Anonymous, uh, one of their slogans, which works maybe in alcoholism, but it doesn't work in. Yes, it works if you have your FDR and you have a fireside chat and you explain banking in a simple way that people understand. But that's not a simpleton keeping it simple. That is a very savvy guy knowing how to handle the public and how to handle the economy and doing what he needs to do to promote good programs. And he had a hard time waking up America to what was happening in Germany. They weren't concerned. And trying to help Churchill, which America, and if you saw some of these people parading, why not negotiate with Hitler and why not, just forget about that whole intervention and all that. You really can't. You have to face all your problems. You can't hide your head in the sand. So that in regards to abortion, My main point is that it is a topic primarily being used as a means of political manipulation and power seeking. If you examine what is really being proposed, it's a bunch of baloney. If you leave it up to the states, you're still going to have abortions. If you outlawed it completely, like in Cuba or Italy or some other place, you would still have abortions. And so you have these people inspired with a keep it simple, stupid type of morality and moral reform. No homosexuality, that's an abomination. Imagine if they got to the point that you can't sow your field with two different kinds of seeds or have different kinds of material fabric on your clothes. That's all Leviticus. Where are you going to draw the line there? What should you impose? You look at the Old Testament, they're going to have the death penalty, being cut off, and all kinds of other things for violating Sabbath and a whole bunch of other stuff. The rabbis, of course, are wise, and they have adapted and modernized many things, and especially not imposing it on others who are unwilling. So you have to ventilate all these issues, all these movable parts, and then you can arrive at a very much more sincere, thought out, and ultimately moral approach to legislation. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about changing the Catholic doctrine necessarily. I mean, I did at some point read about, and I forget some of the ideas, but the zygote, a fertilized egg, could be multiplying. You don't know if it's one person, two persons, whatever. There's room there for living, even though you have this other faith, with laws that accommodate others in society so that we can live together. And what we have now is an incredible interest in polarizing and monopolizing, even with gerrymandering, parts of the population so that you can be in power as a politician. I remember that gay guy, congressman, anti-gay completely. Then he goes to the bathroom, solicits, sticks his foot out into the other stall, and he's caught. He goes, "Oh no, I just have a wide stance. My foot just goes into the other stall where in this bathroom where you had gay encounters." But in public, he was the most anti-gay person there was. Hypocrisy, lying. Those are not pro-life virtues. And I think what we have with the abortion issue, and Trump basically got elected with a lot to do. I am going to appoint a Supreme Court that will outlaw abortion. That is the solution. I have friends in Italy. That's the panacea. Everything will. The reform of society begins with and ends almost with that. It's an illusion. It's a legislation that has all kinds of gray areas. It can vary from one place to another. And even if you had a medieval monolithic society like in the Muslim countries, you would still have the rich, especially, finding ways around those laws. And this is the kind of discourse that most people won't listen to. I have 36 followers. If I were doing something else, who knows how many followers I would have. I may have, I could inspire people to, I'm not going to even say, but this guy that went to Buffalo was inspired, quote unquote. to reduce the black population. He had other targets. And of course, guns. If part of your politics is no abortion, yes, guns, what kind of pro life person are you? You are, you know, very, very, very out there wrong morally. Faith and reason is not your thing. It's a blind, fanatic, pseudo false faith, and reason with that virus, upload or whatever they do, that has corrupted your way of thinking and or even your ability to think correctly. And I thought I was going to go a long time with this, but I think I've said enough. Remember again, Vatican II, bishops were saying, some of them, falsehood has no rights. And they were against religious liberty. And that was roundly defeated by the great majority of bishops who had learned a lot during those discussions, especially with the teaching of the theologians. I was basically fired from the seminary, which towards the end of my time there, a new pharaoh came trying to clean the swamp, just like Trump. He had his picture prominently displayed with Romney. I wonder what he would say about Romney now. By the way, he became a bishop. And surreptitiously, secretly, basically, they had to celebrate the 50th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, of the beginning of Vatican II. They didn't announce it. I was a member of the faculty. Somebody had told me months before. I apparently expected publicity for this event of the seminary. And at the end of the day, I missed it. I got a chance to hear a CD and to see the very beginning in DVD, because apparently they quit filming or something. And the whole idea there, led by the rector, was Vatican II, bad thing. So if you're a good Catholic and you deny Vatican II or don't want to talk about it or don't want to know what it really means, I don't know how you can do that. But lying is a bad thing to do. And there happened to be a bishop there who was the one that told me. There was a retired bishop in the seminary who had been, I don't know if the word is co-opted. He was in Rome studying. He knew Latin. He wasn't a bishop then. He was a student. But his own bishop comes from the United States, no knowledge of Latin or incredibly insufficient. And he puts this guy as an expert so he can help him understand the sessions in Latin. And so when the seminary had this sort of non-event, sort of non-commemorating the beginning of Vatican II, and the assaults began, that Vatican II was very bad, and there was, all kinds of falsehoods. I don't even remember what they were, but it was all down, down, down. This bishop, who didn't want to antagonize the crowd, at least said, no, it wasn't like that at all. It was a really good event of soul searching and discussion and really trying to find the will of God. But in those Catholic extreme circles, the truth and history and knowledge is to be disregarded or denied if it doesn't conform with, again, your keep it simple, stupid way of thinking. Humans don't like tension. Humans don't like uncertainty. Humans like things black and white, clear. Unfortunately, it isn't always possible. Eventually, a certain clarity does emerge, and I think some people have arrived at a much greater clarity, but you don't have real clarity by oversimplifying, and especially by emphasizing emotions over reason. No great thinking comes out of excess adrenaline and emotionalism. And with that, I think I've said enough. I was interested in doing a video like this, but it wasn't really a pleasurable experience. But I hope it serves some purpose.